Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Week 12 Highlight Haven NFL Tailgate Show. I am your host, Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by Josh Wolver of Josh's Sports Report to preview each and every game heading into Week 12 of the NFL season. Josh, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, Matt, all credit to you. Thanks for having me on. We're all the way up to week 12 now. Season's going by pretty fast. Only got 6 weeks left, but let's get into it.
Yeah, and again, we will be taking callers throughout the stream, so feel free to call in using the link in the chat. I will also be watching the chat if you have any questions during the stream. With that being said, we have a great week ahead of us, so let's jump right into it. Starting with Titans at Texans. Texans 7.5 point favorites in this one. Titans 2-8 on the year. Texans are 7-4. Tajay Spears is out in this one for the Titans. Josh, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean the Texans not been as great as of late. Obviously, they beat the Cowboys Monday Night Football last week, but Joe Mixon has just been an amazing pickup in his early 30s, but he has been awesome since coming over from Houston. I expect him to have a huge game against a pretty weak Tennessee defense, sitting at 2-8. The problem all year has been the quarterback for Tennessee. Obviously, Tony Pollard's been able to do some stuff in the ground game, but 7.5, I feel like is a pretty decent line in this game. I'll take the Texans by a touchdown.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned how good Joe Mixon has been. He's averaged 121 scrimmage yards per game this season to go along with 11 touchdowns in just 8 games. Of course, he's coming off that performance with over 150 scrimmage yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Last week, the Texans allowed the sixth least passing yards per game and the ninth least rushing yards per game. Overall, a pretty solid defense. Titans are not great in the passing game, and I do think that they're definitely going to struggle in the running game. They're going to have to rely a lot on Tony Pollard in this one without Tajay Spears. And overall, I don't think this game's honestly going to be that difficult. Titans have lost 5 of their last 6 games, and Houston is coming off a 24-point victory. Give me Houston. Yeah, I have the Texans winning. They're going to keep their momentum, and I do think they'll cover the spread. I could definitely see this one being a double-digit victory.
Matt, I
But
got
I
a
don't
really
think
interesting stat here. Sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt. If Joe Mixon scores a rushing touchdown today, he'll set the Texans' franchise record for most consecutive games with a rushing touchdown, passing Arian Foster and Dominique Williams, who each had 6. So chance at a record today for Mixon.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely wouldn't doubt his ability to break that record. Definitely
Yeah.
think there's a good shot. But moving over to the next game, actually another divisional matchup. Vikings at Bears. Vikings 3.5 point favorites. They're 8-2 on the year. Bears are 4-6. No major injuries in this one. Bears are on a 4-game losing streak. As we mentioned, though, I don't think they've deserved all of those losses. I think that a lot of them have been close games. That's kind of 50-50. They didn't get necessarily the benefit of the doubt there. But Bears average third least amount of passing yards per game this season. Vikings allow the least amount of rushing yards per game. Obviously, Justin Jefferson has been incredible, 91 receiving yards per game, and he has 3 games this season with 100 plus receiving yards and 5 total touchdowns. Aaron Jones averages 95 scrimmage yards per game, including 5 games with 100 plus scrimmage yards. I have the Vikings in this one. I think the Bears are going to keep it very close like they did last week against the Packers. Vikings win their fourth in a row. Bears lose their fifth in a row. And it's kind of crazy that the Bears are going to lose 5 in a row if they do lose this one. Because, of course, that would be losses by 6 points against the Commanders. That would be a loss by 1 point against the Packers. Both of those games ended in really rough situations for them. So I think the record could honestly look a lot more like, 6-4 maybe if they've won a few of those close games that they just haven't been able to, take care of.
Yeah, I think you're right. You mentioned that Chicago will keep a close eye. I agree with you. Another one of those divisional matchup games that could flip flop either way. Here's my thing: Minnesota is coming in playing just not the football they started off the year with. Right? They were one of the 2 undefeated teams, along with the Chiefs, through 5 weeks. They've eked out wins against the Titans, Colts, and Jaguars in the last 3 weeks. Right? So you say they're coming in on a 3-game winning streak. I'm not too confident. Sam Darnold uh, has not been what he was to start the year. You wonder if we're seeing regression from Minnesota's offense after what. I mean, Sam Darnold's career was revived through the first 5 weeks, but he's actually started to come back down to earth a little bit. And then when you look at things from the Bears side of things, you mentioned it. Bad luck has gone terribly. Tariq Stevenson cost them the game, celebrating too early. That was absolutely horrible. We mentioned how he might even get benched for that, which he did. Here's the thing, Bears coming in on a lot of those games that they've lost in a row. Caleb Williams, Matt, hasn't thrown a touchdown in the last 4 weeks. A
Wow.
touchdown pass, that is.
Yeah.
And he threw 9 in the first 5 weeks. So what's happening to Caleb Williams, right? Like this Bears passing attack can be good with Roma Dunze, with Keenan Allen. You've got weapons there. Caleb Williams was drafted number 1 overall for a reason. He was great last year at USC. His entire college career he was. So the thing is going to be the Bears offense. I'm expecting a low scoring game. Can the Bears offense do enough? They don't have to play over the top. They just have to do enough, and that'll get them on the win. But I do think it'll be Minnesota in a 1-2 point game.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Now, Cowboys at Commanders. Cowboys 10.5 point favorites. This is tied
You mean
for
Commanders favorites, right?
yeah, Commanders are the favorites.
Okay.
And this is actually the tied for the biggest, I guess you could call it the team that's favored by the most. Uh, the Chiefs will get into this one. They're also favored by 10.5. But it's kind of crazy. I don't think anyone could have expected this spread going into this week, at least before the season started. Cowboys 3-7. Commanders are 7-4. They have lost their last two games. So Marshawn Lattimore out with a hamstring injury. Also, Trayvon Diggs and Zach Martin are out in this game. Josh, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's not much to like about the Cowboys. They're coming in on 3 and
Yeah.
7 without a starting quarterback. They just got, I mean, killed by the Texans and Eagles in back-to-back weeks at home. So what makes me think they're going to travel into Washington and play well? Absolutely nothing, Matt. I think this Cowboys team is a pretty fair spread at double digits. I think the Commanders um, have just been playing a lot better football without Dak. It's clear the Cowboys offense is dirt. It's nothing. I mean, they've been getting nothing going. They score 6 against the Eagles. They score 10 against the Texans. And I'm not going to sit here and act like their defense has been any better. They've given up 34 in both of those games, right? Nothing is going well for the Cowboys except maybe Braden Aubrey. He's been one of the best kickers in the league this year. But yeah, field goals doesn't win you games, Cowboys. And I mean, there's nothing to like for Dallas. I see Washington blowing this game out. I mean, 7-4 against 7-3. Obviously a divisional matchup, but I think Washington's just gonna maybe have a little slow start, but then run away with it in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys are just atrocious. Honestly, of course, I have the Commanders too. Commanders going to get off to a lead at halftime. Not going to look back from there. Should be a
Mhm.
pretty easy victory. Cowboys have lost their last 5 games though, and their rushing game is obviously really bad, averaging just 82 rushing yards per game, which is the second least in the NFL. They also allow 151 rushing yards per game, which is the second most in the NFL. So maybe a solid mix between Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler in this game. I do think they could make a big impact. I don't necessarily think the Commanders are going to have to rely on passing the ball too much, assuming they do get out to that early lead. Terry McLaurin had a bad week last week, but I do expect him to bounce back, especially with Trayvon Diggs out in this one. Of course, Cooper Rush making another start. Cooper Rush, from what we've seen so far, he didn't play terrible a few years ago when he made his first starts as a Cowboys QB. He's looked atrocious this year. Nothing has gone right for him. And I've seen nothing that proves that Cooper Rush can win a football game this
Right.
season. But yeah, I'm definitely expecting a solid game from the running back pair.
And
Commanders,
Washington knows how big this game is, right? After
yeah, I
after the
mean,
Eagles have been playing extremely hot, Washington almost has to win this game for the
yeah, I mean,
chance at the division.
I don't know if division's necessarily in the picture as much if the Eagles do end up winning today. There's a shot, but it's not necessarily that likely. Right
Mhm.
now, I'd be concerned about making the playoffs if we lose this game because that'd be 3 losses in a row. And it's like, okay, now we're just on a downward trajectory. Like, what happens from here? I want to make sure that
Mhm.
we get back in the win column. but I'm going to say Commanders win by 14, so they do cover the spread.
Okay.
Washington ends their losing streak and picks up a big win against their division rivals. Now, moving over to the next game, Patriots at Dolphins, another divisional matchup. Yes, all four games so far have been divisional matchups. Dolphins 5.5 point favorites. Patriots 3-8. Dolphins 4-6. Kendall Fuller is out for the Dolphins in this one. Now, the Dolphins have won their last two games and have averaged 24 points per game in their last four games, with Tua having returned. Of course, they average the least amount of points out of any team without Tua, so their offense has clearly looked a lot better. Patriots average the second least amount of points out of any team with 17, and they also average the fewest passing yards per game with just 166. Tyreek
Mhm.
started his season off with a touchdown against Jacksonville and then went on a long streak without any touchdowns. He's had one touchdown in his past two games, two total touchdowns.
Mhm.
Tua obviously coming off that 288 passing yard game with three touchdowns and zero interceptions. Devon Achane has had over 100 scrimmage yards in three of his last four games. He also has a total of four touchdowns throughout those games. I think that the Patriots will keep it extremely close. We've seen them be able to keep it close with some of these good teams in the NFL. Drake May has looked really solid. He's looked like a leader. But still, I do have the Dolphins pulling out with this one. I'm going to say that they're going to win. I'm being a little more specific today with my predictions. We're going to say that they win on a game winning field goal, so they win by 3 points.
Matt, I see where you're coming from when saying the Dolphins are going to keep it close. They're not. I mean, you mentioned New England's coming in on a hot streak. When you look at their overall record, they're at 3-8. Sure, they've been contending. I mean, they forced a one possession game, excuse me, against the Rams. They just crushed the Bears. They forced overtime against Tennessee. But this Dolphins record is a lot better than their 4-6 record suggests. Tua Tagovailoa is a leader of the Miami offense with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and that running back duo. It's just too much for New England's defense to handle. And then when you look at the other side of things, sure, I'd agree with you. Drake May is coming in playing pretty good football. 282 yards, a touchdown, and interception a week ago against Los Angeles. I got Miami by 2+ touchdowns. I don't think this is going to be close just because in in Miami, the Dolphins have so many more weapons. I feel like the Dolphins are just due for one of those games where they just drop 50, right? It's like once every like 7 weeks, the internal clock goes off. Tua goes 350 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and they score 50 against some mid-tier team, and everybody calls them contenders. And then the next 2 weeks, they score like 10 points. So this is Miami's turn to score 40 plus. I get this one at a blowout, 14, 15 plus point game.
Yeah, well, we both have the Dolphins in that one. Now, the other game that I was talking about, obviously, with that 10.5 point favorite, is the Chiefs at Panthers. Chiefs, 10.5 point favorites. They're 9-1. Panthers are 3-7. Isaiah Pacheco will be out again this week. This was the
Mhm.
first week he was technically able to play, but he won't. I'm expecting him to probably return next week if I had to guess. The Panthers are a disgrace. Okay, they allow 160 rushing yards per game, which is the most in the NFL. They allow 31 points per game, which is the most in the NFL. They average 171 passing yards per game, which is the second least in the NFL. They average 17 points per game, which is the third least in the NFL. It's terrible. And I
So
think
much
that
of a disgrace that they're on a 2-game winning streak. Just
the competition hasn't been great. I'll say that.
right, Saints and the
Compe-
Giants.
yeah, competition has not been nearly good at all. Now, I think the one area that we can agree has been solid for them this year is Chuba Hubbard, right?
Right.
But then you look at that, and the Chiefs allow just 85 rushing yards per game, which is the third least in the NFL. They shut down Carolina's run game, and now you have to rely on Bryce Young passing the ball against this Chiefs defense. And he's had two whatever games, like not terrible, definitely better than what we saw from him to start the season and last season. He's going to look really ugly in this game. It's going to be a bad game for him, I can tell you that much. Kareem Hunt has averaged 89 scrimmage yards per game and 5 total touchdowns in 7 games with the Chiefs, and I don't see a world where Kansas City passes the ball that much in this game. I think that it's going to be a game where they rely heavily running the ball, and I think Kareem Hunt is potentially going to get the ball on 50% of the plays. I think he could get 50% of the touches in this game. I
Uh,
really I just think they're gonna run the ball a lot. They're gonna obviously get off to an early lead, and there's no need to pass the ball either. Carolina's offense should be really bad in this game. No chance the Chiefs lose 2 in a row as well. Obviously, we know that, especially when they're facing the Panthers. Despite a somewhat slow start maybe, Kansas City will pick up a double-digit victory and advance to 10-1 on the year.
okay, Matt. Well, let's talk about your take that they'll run the ball on 50% of the plays. I disagree, right? I understand that Kareem Hunt, the Panthers are not good at stopping the run. That's just the simplest way to put it, right?
Mm,
They don't have a good defense. They're really not great anywhere on the field besides the running back spot. And maybe you could say they have a little. I mean, I guess now that they traded Deontay Johnson, they really don't have anything at the receiver
no.
besides Xavier Legette, the rookie. But here's the thing: I'm relatively high on the Panthers, Matt. Actually, wait, no. Let me finish my take on this. Uh, Patrick Mahomes has not been the Patrick Mahomes we know of this year. So why not let him get into a rhythm and just unleash the football against the Panthers? I mean, maybe if you want to say to like protect him from injury and the game's going to be like a blowout and he's not going to play in the fourth quarter, maybe I could see that. But I honestly see a game where Andy Reid schemes this up to like have Patrick Mahomes throw 30 plus passes because he just wants him to get back into right a rhythm against a pretty bad Panthers team. Maybe like take off the training wheels on what's been a not great season for him and kind of step up. But Matt, you're right. This Chiefs defense is going to dominate the Panthers. They've been the bright spot of Kansas City all season long. And as I look at the Panthers schedule, I'm a guy that's relatively high on them. I picked them 2 straight weeks to pull off upsets, and they did. But I'm looking at their schedule. I'm not sure they're going to win another game. Uh, Chiefs, Buccaneers at home. You go road to Philadelphia, home against the Cowboys, Panthers, and then you finish road against the Buccaneers and Falcons. So Chiefs, Bucks twice, Eagles, Cowboys, Cardinals, Falcons. I mean, they might not win another game.
I mean, definitely could pick up that week
Maybe the
18
Cowboys.
win against the Falcons, depending on if they clinch the division or not by then.
Right, but like
Yeah,
mm,
I get what you
mm,
mean.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Carolina's got problems down the stretch and they're not going to end them today. The Chiefs are going to pick up this win. Uh 10.5 seems a little high for me. But I'll give the Chiefs to cover the spread. No, they win by.
Yeah, and again, if you're watching this, make sure you do call in using the link in the chat and the one that I just put up on the screen right there. Now, Buccaneers at Giants. This would be a terrible game assuming Daniel Jones is starting, but it's going to be a
He's
lot
not. He
more
got cut.
yeah,
Daniel Jones
I
got
know,
cut.
but I'm saying it's gonna be a lot more interesting without him watching this
Oh,
game.
right. Sure.
It's gonna be a lot more
Sure.
interesting. Obviously, Tommy DeVito will be starting for the Giants, and Mike Evans will be making his return. I think he was dealing with a hamstring injury, was it? Of course, Chris Godwin's out for the
Right.
year, but I think that the Bucks are at least appreciative that Mike Evans will be coming back in this one. And this is obviously first game without Daniel Jones. So maybe that sparks something for the Giants. Maybe they're
Mhm.
like, screw Daniel Jones. We want to go out here now that he's not on our team. We want to pick up the win. We want to show that we're better without him. I could definitely see that happening. Um, but then again, the Giants have been a disgrace this year. They average 16 points per game, which is the least in the NFL. They also allow
Mhm.
147 rushing yards per game, which is the fourth most in the NFL. Doesn't pair well with how Rashad White has been playing. 5 total touchdowns in his last 4 games. Lucky Irving has also averaged 77 scrimmage yards in his past 5 games, as well as 3 total touchdowns. Kate Otten been pretty good as well. 73 receiving yards per game in his last 4 games, including 3 touchdowns. Here's the thing. There's an aspect where we could see Tommy DeVito look great, and we could see the Giants kind of have a bounce back resurgence without Daniel Jones, but I don't really think that's going to happen. That's always a what if possibility. It won't happen in this game, though. I think it's gonna take a lot of adjusting to do. Malik Neighbors might struggle with the new quarterback. Obviously, he's never played with DeVito in his career. Some of these other guys have
Mm,
played with him
last year.
last season. Neighbors, obviously, rookie, has never played with him. So that's going to be a struggle there. Overall, I do think Tampa Bay is not really going to have any troubles covering the spread against New York in this one.
Yeah, I'm taking the Buccaneers in this game.
Mm.
Obviously, this is you mentioned it, a chance for the Giants to show what they can do without Daniel Jones, prove that Daniel Jones was the problem. But I don't think they will. This Buccaneers team is at 4-6. They have an off chance to get into the playoffs, but really not. But I do see them picking up this win just because Tommy DeVito coming into his first game. This is their third quarterback on the roster, right? Obviously, he's a fan favorite from New Jersey, lifelong Giant fan, and it's a great story. Um, he had that one Linsanity game last year where he just went crazy. They beat the Packers in prime time. And other than that, he just wasn't good. I mean, he had one great game where no one could figure him out, and then guys decided, yeah, we know this guy, and he's a quarterback three for a reason, right? Tommy DeVito, I'm sure the Giants players are sort of hyped to not be playing with Daniel Jones anymore. Expect a huge game from running back Tyrone Tracy, but with Mike Evans coming back, with Baker Mayfield, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, I think the Giants have a good enough defense to slow them down, but not a good enough offense to match them.
And now a game that might not necessarily be too close. Lions at
Mm.
Colts. Lions only 7-point favorites. Obviously picked up that 46-point victory last week. So 7 might be a little low in this one. Lions are 9-1, Colts 5-6. Terrion Arnold is out for Detroit. Josh, is this an easy win for the Lions?
Yeah, I think so. 9-1, Indianapolis quarterback problems. The Lions are the most complete team in football. They've been playing so great offensively. I mean, when you just take a look back at their schedule, they scored 52 last week against the Jaguars, one of their worst games of the season. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, but they still win against the Texans. They beat their division rivals in the Packers. They put up 52 on the Titans. They put up 47 on the Cowboys. They beat the other division rivals. They scored 42 against the Seahawks. The Detroit's gonna overpower them. I think a whole single digit spread is way too small. I get it's in Indianapolis. Pat McAfee tweeting all about how many Lions fans there are in the building, so it's not gonna be much of a home field advantage for the Colts there. Lions by 20 in a game that won't be close. I think Jameer Gibbs will probably dominate in the run game. That 1-2 punch has been huge all year for Detroit in the running game, and then the passing game. It's really hard to stop the Goff to Amon Ra connection. So very interesting to see if the Lions can actually lose a game for once. But I'm expecting another huge game from their offense, and then their defense has been almost as good all season as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Lions are obviously on an 8-game win streak. Amon-Ra St. Brown has at least one touchdown in each of those 8 games. I believe he has one touchdown in 7 of those 8 games, and then he had 2 touchdowns last week. So he's been on fire. Lions allow the 5th fewest rushing yards per game, while the Colts allow the 5th most rushing yards per game. Obviously, Lions average 152 rushing yards per game, which is the 3rd most in the NFL, with that Sonic and Knuckles backfield of Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery. Jameer Gibbs, in his last 5 games, has averaged 120 scrimmage yards to go along with 5 touchdowns. I don't think it's going to be that close. Lions pick up another win and cover the spread. I could definitely see this one being double digits. Don't think they should have any issue beating this Colts team. I mean, the Colts are not uh, that good, honestly, and I think they're
Right.
going out with Richardson. Richardson obviously had a good week last week, so with how his season has gone, I think he's due for a bad week. It's that simple. Richardson's due for a bad week. This Lions defense has looked really solid, allowed just 6 points to the Jaguars last week, and I think that the Jaguars and the Colts are very similar in terms of offensive production, so I could definitely
Mhm.
see something like that again. But yeah, give me Detroit. Won't be that close.
Right, and I agree with you about that Richardson thing. While he's starting, I mean, I was in attendance for Jets Colts last week. He made a couple good throws, I'd say. I mean, they barely let him throw the ball over 10 yards down the field. It was um, a lot of the receivers doing the dirty work. But where he really made his money was in the running game, right? He was able to escape the pocket multiple times, had those two rushing touchdowns, lowered his shoulder. He's a very physical kind of quarterback who reminds me who plays kind of like a college style offense where there's a lot more movement out of the quarterback position, and you get him open in space. He can do a lot of stuff. But how confident am I for in him to outduel Jared Goff and the Lions offense? Zero. Absolutely 0%. There's no reason the Colts should win this game.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. Now, Broncos at Raiders. Broncos are 6-point favorites. Of course, they're 6-5. Raiders 2-8. Heavy divisional matchups this week. A lot of them.
Right.
I don't know the exact number, but this is obviously another one. Josh Reynolds out for the Broncos. Shouldn't matter. I have a Broncos victory on the road covering the spread. And I think that Broncos aren't going to win their division. They play with the Chiefs, they play with the Chargers. Despite that, I do think they're a really good team. This win, if they win, would make them 7-5. And going into last week, their 5 wins had come against teams who had a combined record of 15-34. And I think I mentioned that. But
Mm.
then they picked up a really, really good win, 38-6, so 32-point victory against the Falcons. And now it's like, okay, they can beat these good teams or at least solid teams. They should have beaten the Chiefs. They outplayed the Chiefs in that matchup. So that makes their competition, their wins look a lot better right there. But no, Bo Nix obviously has had a historic stretch as of recently. Javonte Williams has averaged 70 scrimmage yards per game throughout his last 7 games. And Cortland Sutton, this is ridiculous. Okay, Cortland Sutton, in his first 7 games of the season, racked up 277 receiving yards in his first 7 games. In his last 4 games, he's gotten 370. So 3 less games, almost over 100 more receiving yards. Raiders average just 75 rushing yards per game, which is the fewest in the NFL. And the Raiders have allowed 29 points per game to their opponents so far this season. Denver has scored at least 33 points in 3 of their last 7 games. Give me the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, man, it is going to be the Ponies stampeding their way over the Raiders. The last time the Raiders won a game was September 29th against the Browns.
Wow,
We are at November 24th for those who don't know. So it has
about two
been,
months.
yeah, it's been 2 months since the Raiders won a football game 7 weeks ago. There is no reason the Broncos should lose this game. You mentioned they beat up the Falcons last week, 38-6, and then they
Mhm.
almost beat the undefeated Chiefs a week ago. If you take that blocked field goal out of the equation, they do. It was only a 2 point game at the final score. Denver, you mentioned last week, I think on the post game show, all those stats about Bo Nix's amazing season and the records that he's shattered for a rookie quarterback. He has been unbelievable. This was supposed to be sort of a progression year and a transition year for Bo Nix and a year that the Broncos weren't meaning to compete. But now sitting here after 11 games as an above 500 squad, they've got to feel great about where they are. And this is another one. I mean, I see the Broncos having a huge run here down the stretch. They just beat the Falcons. You got Raiders, Browns, Colts coming up. So those are 3 games that I think they could easily sweep and put themselves into the playoff picture on a 4 game winning streak. The Broncos could be going somewhere this year, but then when you look at the last 3 games of their season is really when they hit a roadblock. Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs. So I think they're going to go on a 4 game winning streak here and then drop 2 of those 3 to just miss the playoffs. But the bottom line is Broncos win today. They're doing great things right now. Bo Nix, big game. Raiders have nothing to match what the Broncos could do. Broncos by 10.
And I mean, you look at the Broncos, the playoffs is one game, okay? You play one team. If you win, you move on. Obviously, that's simple. If they play the Chiefs, I wouldn't doubt their ability to beat the Chiefs in one game. It's not a series. If it was a
Nah.
series like basketball, then the Chiefs would win. And I know that playoff Chiefs is different than regular
Yeah.
season,
You're
but
counting out playoff Mahomes against the rookie quarterback?
I
That's a bad
still
idea, Matt. We've tried that too many times. We've tried it out Patrick Mahomes too many times. He's hungry for the three-peat.
but I think it could still be competitive, if you ask me. I still think
Yeah,
it could be competitive. Maybe they get
like
lucky, and I
almost.
don't think maybe they get lucky. I don't think that a upset would be completely out of the cards, but final divisional matchup of this week, Cardinals at Seahawks. Cardinals 1-point favorites. They're 6-4 on the year. Seahawks are 5-5 in a very neck and neck division. Obviously, the Cardinals lead the division, are only one game above the Seahawks. So they have Arizona has won their last 4 games in a row, 5 of their last 6. Seahawks average 92 rushing yards per game, which is the fifth fewest in the NFL. They also allow 139 rushing yards per game, which is the sixth most in the NFL. James Conner has been amazing. Obviously, Arizona had their bye last week, but in 3 of Connor's last 4 games, he's had over 100 scrimmage yards, and he's passed that 100 scrimmage yard threshold 6 different times this season. I do have a Cardinals victory. They will maintain their spot at the top of the NFC West, and I think this game will be close. I do have Arizona covering the spread because it's hard to say they won't cover the spread. It's a 1-point spread, so it's like I have them covering the spread, but don't get me wrong, it will be a very close game. But yeah, give me Arizona in this one, advancing their record to 7-4.
I think Vegas has this spot on with the spread at one point. This is a coin flip for me. This is a complete toss up. This is about as 50-50 as it gets. You're talking about two division matchups. I get that the Cardinals are coming in on a hot streak. They just got their bye week, but you got to remember how much of a home field advantage the Seahawks give you. I mean, this is not a fluke. You're not like going into Miami and there's a bunch of like retired people there. I mean, the Seahawks, I mean, their crowd noise alone like draws 3 penalties a game, right? So this is not a walk in the park at all for Arizona. Should they win this game, they basically have locked up the division, barring any sort of comeback, which is hard to say in week 12 going into week 13. But they have been extremely hot, especially if this is a convincing win. You can lock up Arizona for the division. But I expect Seattle to keep this very close. Big game, DK Metcalf, big game. Tyler Lockett, big game. Geno Smith, who had that game winner a week ago against the 49ers. And you got to remember that the Seahawks haven't been playing terrible football. I mean, they beat the 49ers, which isn't easy to do. Overtime with the Rams isn't terrible, but you just got to remember Arizona had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They're coming in on a heater. I think, despite that, Seahawks by 2, I'll say, at home, 425. And I got to say, this is one of the better, on a side note, this is one of the better 425, 4 o'clock windows we've had. Pretty good games, and then not just stay in Monday Night Football look like great games. So maybe not the best clock window, but we've got some quality matchups at the 4 o'clock window.
Yeah, now I do think it should be close. Now another game that we have to talk about with this competitive NFC West is the 49ers versus the Packers. Packers 3-point favorites, 49ers 5-5, Packers 7-3. And a lot of injuries in this one. Brock Purdy, Nick Bosa, and Charvarius Ward are all out for the 49ers. And then maybe the Packers' best player, Jair Alexander, is out for them in this matchup. Josh, I'll let you get it started on this one.
Yeah, the Packers really have not been playing at their peak. They won on a block field goal last week. They lost to the Lions. They barely snuck out a win against what could end up being the worst team in the league against Jacksonville. They won by a field goal. They barely beat the Texans, and those are their last 4 games. And then for the 49ers, you mentioned that injury problem. Heading into Green Bay is never going to be easy. I don't know what the weather looks like, but as we approach the Thanksgiving threshold, this is when we start to see some snow games. We saw one on Thursday Night Football,
Yeah.
Browns Steelers. There was a lot of it, too. It wasn't just a sprinkle. There was a
Yeah.
snow fest there in Cleveland. For the 49ers, though, losses to the Seahawks, they squeaked one out against the Buccaneers and against the Cowboys, and then they lost to the Chiefs in their last 4 games. I'm taking the Packers just because I think Jordan Love's ability to outdo what we've seen out of Brock Purdy without all of his weapons. Could this be a big CMC game, one his biggest game of the season? I think it could be. I think this could be a game where he breaks out, but I don't doubt Green Bay's ability to match that themselves with in the Josh Jacobs department in the running game. 7-3 Green Bay hosting 5-5 San Francisco. Packers by 6.
I would be shocked if the Packers don't win this game. Shocked.
Wow.
First of all, injuries absolutely rattling the 49ers. And Brandon Allen will be starting for them in this matchup. Green Bay averages 150 rushing yards per game. Obviously, that has to do with Josh Jacobs, who has 90-plus scrimmage yards in his last 6 games, including 5 total touchdowns. Throughout that span, CMC has had over 100 scrimmage yards in both of his games so far this season, but he hasn't made a crazy impact. I think he's still trying to, get
Mhm.
back to how he was playing before that injury. I think that 49ers haven't been using him as much as they will start to use him towards the end of the season. Jordan Love averages 260 passing yards per game this season, which is the 5th most of any quarterback. I mean, he just gets someone involved every game, it feels like. Jaden Reed,
Right.
Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft, he gets his guys involved. You can always expect a big game from at least one of them. And the 49ers have gone 2-2 in their last 4 games. Their wins are against the Bucks and the Cowboys, who are both below 500, and San Francisco won both of these games within 6 points each. One of them was won by 6, one of them was won by 3 points. So it's been a rough stretch for the Niners. Injuries aren't going to make this any easier. So yeah, I do have the Packers winning this one, who have won 5 of their last 6 games. Now, I do want to ask you a question. This would make the 49ers 5-6. And I don't know if you've gotten to take a look at the playoff standings yet for the NFC, and I was able to talk
Mhm.
with Chase Coburn on this about this on his podcast yesterday. I was on there for game picks. I think that the 49ers playoff hopes are kind of done if they lose this game.
Yeah, and with no Brock Purdy, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how long he's out for, but I mean, if they go any longer without him, I think you're right. They might be done, but that is a crazy statement. This is a team that just went to the Super Bowl, stars all over the place. Injuries have killed them, Matt. That is the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, right now the team in the 7th seed I think is the Commanders. Commanders are 7-4, and if they lose this game, then there's a very low chance that they would win their division, and then they'd have to probably win at least, I'd say 9 at minimum, most likely around 10 games to make the playoffs. So they would have to go on a crazy streak at the end of the season. I'd say if they lose this, there's about a maybe max of 10% chance that they're able to do anything.
Yeah, I'm looking at NFL.com's playoff picture. They've got the 49ers 14% chance if they lose,
That's
25%
too high
chance.
in my opinion. I think that's too high
Okay.
because
And you're right, the Commanders are at 7 for the
now
record. Good
let me
job,
show
Matt.
you the I'm just gonna run through the standings. The Eagles are gonna make the playoffs. The Commanders are gonna make the playoffs. That's 2. Cardinals are 3, assuming they win the division.
Lions,
Lions,
Falcons.
Vikings, and Packers, all of them are gonna make it. That's gonna make 6 teams. And then the winner of the NFC South, because there has to be a winner of a division, that makes 7
Alright,
teams.
that's the
Where
Falcons.
where do the 49ers go? There's no spots. That's
Yeah,
7
right.
teams, and
No,
none
they don't.
and I guarantee you that none of the teams I named aren't making the playoffs unless maybe the Cardinals.
The
I
lowest chance of not making the playoffs right now in the picture, the Cardinals have a 47% chance if they lose and a 65%, a 79% chance they win. And it's not like they have a terribly hard game, right?
yeah, so I think
Against
the
the
only shot that
Seahawks.
the I think that the only shot the 49ers have is hoping that they beat out the Cardinals in their division, which obviously isn't likely. But no, it's a terrible situation there in San Francisco. We'll see what happens there. Moving over to the night game. So Eagles at Rams. Eagles 3-point favorites. They're 8-2 on the year. Rams are 5-5. Devontae Smith is out for this game. Eagles have been on fire. They've won 6 straight, and they average 181 rushing yards per game, which is the most in the NFL. Saquon Barkley, man, 135 scrimmage yards per game throughout 10 games this season to go along with 10 total touchdowns. A.J. Brown has averaged 88 receiving yards per game this season. Jalen Hurts has 9 rushing touchdowns in his past 5 games. He's also thrown just 1 interception in his last 7 games, to go along with 9 passing touchdowns in his last 7 games. He's been on an absolute tear. Eagles allow just 173 passing yards per game, which is the second fewest in the NFL, and they allow the 7th fewest rushing yards per game. It's hard to imagine the Eagles losing this one with how good they've been. It's hard to imagine, but I am extremely high on the Rams with Nakua and Cup. And I actually think that the Rams have a better chance to win the division than the 49ers as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And then they also actually have one tiebreaker against them. They beat them earlier this season. I still think they have to play one more time, but they do have the tiebreaker. So as of right now, at least, I am going to give it to Philly, but I would not be surprised if the Rams end up taking this one. And I think that we saw a Philly team that was really struggling to start the season with losses against the Falcons, 4-point win against the Browns.
Right.
I think that
Three
we're going to
point,
see
three
them.
points against the 3 points against the Saints.
Yeah.
Terrible Saints team.
I think we're going to see them go back to that like version
Wow.
of themselves at some point. I don't know if it's late in this season. I don't know if it's during the playoffs, which could definitely happen. At some point, they're going to go back to themselves on how they were playing earlier in the year. It
Wow.
might be this game, but I don't necessarily think it will be.
Matt, that is a fiery take. I was not expecting to hear that, but um, here's the thing about the Eagles. You mentioned the tear they're coming in off of. I mean, they've just mowed through everybody in their path these last what was it? What did we say? 6 weeks um, that their win streak has been, and they are getting tested. If they want to be the team that they've been the last 6 weeks and not the team they were the first 4 weeks, they're going to prove it. Rams, Ravens, Panthers, Steelers, Commanders.
Hmm.
That's their next 5.
It's
Let me
not
say it
easy.
again. Rams, Ravens, Panthers, Steelers, Commanders.
Yeah.
If they don't win more than 3 of those, Commanders could just sneak in right through the back door and come out with that division. It's unlikely, but if the Eagles, if what you mentioned it comes true, if they return to that Nick Sirianni major hot seat discussion, Jalen Hurts not as good. Like if they return to that form of themselves, then yeah, I mean there's a chance they don't win this division. But as for Eagles Rams, the Rams are a good football team. Their offense is good. I'm high on Stafford. Their receiving duo has been good all year. Even they've battled through injuries to become a 500 team right now. But when you lose to the Dolphins and it's a 6-point game against the Patriots and you OT against the Seahawks, it's hard to pick you against a team coming in on a 6-game winning streak, right? Eagles will keep it close, I think, or excuse me, the Rams will keep it close, but the Eagles will come out on top. I'd go Birds by 10 in this one on Sunday night.
I could either see Eagles by 10, like you said, or I could see Rams by like 3, maybe 7, 5, something like that.
I think we can
But
both agree it's going to be a good game, though.
yeah, it's gonna be a really, really good game. You just can't convince me though that Philly's gonna keep doing, they're not gonna keep this streak going. They might not play when they return to like their not great selves. It might not necessarily be as bad as how they were playing earlier this year, but they're not gonna maintain this level of play for the rest of the season. No team can. And I think it's kinda opposite for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been playing so bad this year, I guess you could say, and then they're kinda gonna return to the really great Chiefs in the playoffs. And I think it's the opposite for Philly. Philly can't do anything in the playoffs. They lost round 1 to the Buccaneers last year when people were calling them, a major contender. Something's gonna happen. It's not gonna be pretty for Philly fans. But now moving over to the Monday night game, last game of the week, Ravens at Chargers, another game that should be pretty interesting. Chargers are 3-point underdogs in this one. Ravens 7-4. Chargers actually have a better record, 7-3. Baltimore allows just 78 rushing yards per game, which is the second fewest in the NFL. And we know how big of an impact J.K. Dobbins makes. So if he is unable to have a big game in this one, if he gets contained really well, then I could definitely see the Chargers struggling. But Herbert has gotten his receivers more and more involved as the weeks go on. He's looked like one of the best quarterbacks, actually, at least in recent weeks, I would say. But Ravens, of course, average 253 passing yards per game, which is the third most in the NFL, and 177 rushing yards per game, which is the second most in the NFL. Lamar Jackson averages 315 yards per game this season, including rushing yards, and has a total of 25 passing touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. Derrick Henry has at least one touchdown in every game so far this season. Could definitely see that streak continuing. I know that the Chargers have a good defense, but this Ravens offense is immaculate. They have an incredible offense. It's just going to be, it's hard for any team to stop them. You could put them against the best defense in the league. It's going to be hard for them to stop the Ravens because the Ravens are just that dominant. And the Ravens have gone 2-2 in their last 4 games. I don't see a situation where they lose 3 out of their last 5 games. That's
Right.
unlike Baltimore. They're too good to do that. So give me the Ravens in this one. Again, I do like the Chargers, and it will be close, but I do have the Ravens covering the spread as well, picking up the Monday night victory.
This is a really good game. Grab your popcorn, folks. I think Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert are two really good quarterbacks, and then they have two really good running backs besides them. We've mentioned all year how good J.K. Dobbins has been with Los Angeles. Remember, he was a former Raven, maybe a chance at a revenge game for him. And then for the Ravens, they've picked up Derrick Henry, who has just been a beast, a dog, probably Offensive Player of the Year if the season ends today. But you got to remember, Los Angeles is coming in on a 4-game winning streak. They're looking as good as they have in multiple years. Really, the Harbaugh brothers are going to battle it out, but Jim's done a great job taking over as Chargers head coach. After that uh, cheating scandal with Michigan, he's put that behind him, and he's really developed Justin Herbert into the quarterback that we all saw he could become. With that being said, Justin Tucker game-winning field goal. He hasn't been great all year. This is where I'm saying 43 yards, Matt. 43 yards. Justin Tucker is going to kick the field goal. There's going to be 2 seconds on the clock. Somebody, I'm a genie if that happens, but it probably won't. My point is this game is going to be very close. It's probably going to come down to a last second score. But if I had to guess, it would be the Ravens improving to 8-4. That is a very weird division in the AFC North, though. We just saw Steelers get handed a loss by the Browns on Thursday night. Yep, the Browns, the game wreckers, who also beat Baltimore. It feels like that AFC North every single time there's a game there. It's always close. There's always havoc being had. So the division is by no means out of the picture for Baltimore, and by no means locked up for Baltimore. It's going to be a big contest down the stretch, and I think they get one step closer to that AFC North Division title with a win, improving to 7-4, and excuse me, to 8-4. Los Angeles drops to 7-4 on Monday night.
And I'm going to make some bold predictions real quick before we end. I actually did say Ravens were covering the spread. I take that back. I think it's actually going to be a push. And I'm going to go Ravens do win by 3, 34-31.
Okay.
That's going to be my prediction. And we're going to see a Derrick Henry rushing touchdown, at least one. And Lamar's going to have 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Herbert's going to have over 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 passing touchdowns, and 0 interceptions.
So the defenses aren't going to show up, is what
No,
you're saying.
defense, they're going to be terrible. We'll get back to that prediction
Okay.
when the game's over. But that's my bold prediction that could either make me look really dumb or really smart. Probably really dumb. But With that
And
being said, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching before we wrap things up?
no, appreciate you having me on, Matt. Another good week of football, and Red Zone starts in 9 minutes. So let's get this thing
Yeah,
wrapped and let's get
uh,
on our couches.
adjust your fantasy lineups if you have to, everybody. If
Oh,
you're
good
if
point.
you're watching this, enjoy your week of football. And for
Mhm.
everyone who made it up to this point, can't thank you enough for watching. Make sure you also tune into our Week 12 recap show taking place sometime tomorrow afternoon, where we will break down every game that happened during Week 12 of the NFL season. Look forward to seeing you guys there. Again, I'm Matthew Heiserman alongside Josh Wolver for your Week 12 Highlight Haven NFL Tailgate show. And as always, we will see you next time.